So I eventually crashed in that first life when, I became overleveraged. So, you borrowed money to pay salaries and you didn't understand the dynamics. You're not paying attention to your numbers. And then, well, I never told anybody this, and then suddenly at that period of crisis, that was when I now got married. Can you imagine? So everything I struggled. So I literally came to a halt. Even the car I had, I lost it because I parked it for exchange for collateral, and cut the story short. So I went through my own dark moment.
My father told me life is not a bit.
This is Origins Africa podcast, where we explore the origin stories of people who have made and are making their dreams come true, asking the what, the when, the how, and the why. I'm Usheye, and on the first episode of our chat with Emmanuel Tarfa, a management consultant and partner at Enzo Krypton Company Limited, we explore critical moments when he popped in the course of his journey. We talk about the disappointment that led to the biggest blessing of his life, the life-changing entrepreneurship mistake he made twice, as well as the death of his first life in business. You know what they say about learning from your mistakes and not repeating them, yeah? Well, Emmanuel Tarfa had made the same mistake twice on the path to living his dreams. The first mistake heralded a dark period in Emmanuel's life. He had to let go of his staff. He lost his cars and literally came to a halt. But after a few months, he won a new contract which brought in millions of naira. Life was indeed getting better. Emmanuel made the same mistake again, lost it all, and was back to ground zero for the second time. According to Emmanuel, that was the end of his first business life. What was that mistake he made twice, which many entrepreneurs and even career professionals need to be aware of? What were the lessons and how has it become better for it today? Stay tuned as we explore the origin story of Emmanuel Tarfa. Today, Emmanuel is a partner and co-founder at Enzo Krypton Company Limited, and he's on a mission to replicate himself into 1 million youth towards solving the human capital development crisis he believes is crippling the Nigerian market. On this episode, you hear us use the word pop a number of times as Emmanuel talks about how he popped across the different stages of his life journey. And to pop means to become conscious or aware of what you're doing, as against just following and doing stuff blindly. Emmanuel's first pop happened when he was 12 years old. Now, Emmanuel had grown up in the north, and for the first 10 years of his life, he was in Bauchi and Yola before moving to Lagos when his dad was promoted to the Deputy General Manager position at Nitel. Because of the different moves, amongst other reasons, Emmanuel had to repeat Primary 5 about 3 times and then do Primary 6.
We moved 2 states. We moved from Yola to Bauchi and from Bauchi to Lagos. And at every point, there will be some kind of exam and I was some kind of check on my prior experience, and I didn't have, or rather, exams or tests or whatever. They were like, you're not impressed. You feel like you write another exam. And I don't think I passed any of those exams. So I had to repeat.
And according to Emmanuel, that period changed his life because that was when he popped.
So, but in between all that period, I did Primary 5 3 times and I did Primary 6 once. And that was what changed my life. Prior to that, I would have been on a fast track, probably finished secondary school 99, 2000, but I finished in 2002. So I was one of I won't say the oldest, but among the oldest, which is a bit embarrassing sometimes. But the whole idea was that my life was changed when I popped. And the word pop means when a child keeps saying, come, go, but doesn't know what that means. It's just repeating what the adults are saying. And it gets to a time the child now knows the meaning of come and the meaning of go. At that point, and knows how to apply it. That period it's what I call the pop period, where the child has popped. So that's when I popped. So everything I've been listening, learning, I used to come autumn or close to bottom of the class. But the moment I did that primary 5 3 times, and then I did the primary 6, I popped. I became the school captain of, and then went ahead to secondary school to have an amazing experience.
So Emmanuel popped, went on to become the school captain of Air Force Primary School in Victoria Island, proceeded to secondary school, and
I was very mature. So the gap between me and the average guy then was quite wide. I mean, I had some other things in my background that I can't go into now, but in terms of, I used to punish my mates in JS1 or JS2. I remember when I told some of them they were making noise and I walked in. They made my mates, but they say, you know what, you kneel down, raise your hand. And they did, out of respect, out of reverence, because I did not carry myself like any of them. I was extremely clean and neat because I could wash. Some of them all their life had never washed in JS1. So my white shirt was always the example. I was very disciplined and I carried myself a bit more respectful, with some sort of decorum. And that got me a lot of attention at that time. So I became class captain in JS1 and, up till when I got to SS2, I became school captain. I had some very remarkable stories with teachers and some of the stuff I did. For instance, one of my teachers was sick. I didn't resume early. That was in JS3. And before she came, I got there. I organized the whole class. I said, you know what, guys, let's, the teacher is not around now and we don't know who she's going to be. They've only told us her name. So, you had form teachers. So I got the class. We contributed money. We bought brooms. We bought dusters. We bought all the things we needed to run our class. And then immediately she resumed and I learned. I went to the staff room, sat with her, opened the books and said, this is what we've contributed. This is what we've done. This is what she was just looking at me like, is this a JS3 kid? I'd done that at that time. I remember coming back as a class captain from the holiday. And because I had not set up a roster, I would sweep the classroom alone. Like, these classrooms of 70-something people, I would sweep it alone. Sometimes I'll beg a friend to join me, but most times I did it so that when we resumed on Monday morning, I don't want anybody walking to that and say, why is this class dead? I did those things in my private moments. Some of my mates never knew I did that.
What inspired all this?
So I told you that I popped. And to pop means you move from being a child to begin to aspire to have the mindset of an adult. So, and that's an advice to parents on the side. Don't rush your kids through this whole learning thing. There's a generation that has been lost. And I can tell you that because in the corporate world, we just have some people who are like, who trained you? What kind of thing is this, But what inspired me was largely spiritual. I had a very good spiritual upbringing, in terms of faith and believe in God. And it's out of the belief in God that it's God that is watching you. You're not doing it because you're expecting someone to reward you. Yes, some of those things may be there in residues, but the real goal was God is watching you and you do it unto him with all your heart. That was really it for me.
Curiously, what was Emmanuel like before he popped?
So I was a very naughty kid. I was a prayer point. I was notorious. If you ask my colleague, when I say notorious, I was just stubborn. And the funny thing is I wasn't conscious. And that's how I like to describe it. When you say you're not conscious, you're doing stuff and you don't know what you're doing. So I was very playful, just through the cares of life. I didn't care about it. And just playful child that wasn't conscious.
This then begs the question, what led to Emmanuel's popping at the age of 12? Was there an influence? How did it happen?
There's a friend, now he's a pastor, his name is Bayo Bello. So there in VI where we used to live, Adiola Hopewell, we just jokingly one day I just asked him, does he know memory verses? And his dad was not a Christian then, and I popped the memory verse at him and he just looked at me that this small boy knows memory verse. And then we used to go to Good News Club Sunday evenings. So I threw the memory verse at him, he didn't get it. So I don't know, that struck him, but suddenly, I don't know what happened to him. There was a revival. He just became extremely, a Christian. He read his Bible like several times. He became very good. We started fellowship. So I was also influenced by that. And that affected me. And I also became a Christian. So the whole idea, I remember when we used to walk around in VI then to go and preach, sometimes. Then, kids are 12 years old. Now you can't walk on the streets from 1004. We just stroll, meet people, tell them about Jesus. We did that in this Lagos. But now you can't even put someone on the street. And things have changed. And that's why I say I have a problem with the way religion has not helped us shape the country well. But that's, if you give me time, I'll talk about that much later. But the point is, we were just sincerely genuine. We'll sit down and we'll study the book of Philippians. And when I went to JS1 and JS2, he used to write me letters. The Fusca paper is like, if you pull it out from the center, it's about 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 pages, right?
Yeah,
1, 2, 3, 4.
yeah.
He used to do like 2 or 3 of that. And he will fill it up with not letters of anything personal. You just say, "Dear Emmanuel, greetings to you in the name of Jesus." And he starts. Literally. And you could scripture explain just to me. Literally. You know the way Paul wrote to Titus and there was no... I wish I could still find some letters when I go home. I'll check at my parents' house. But he wrote those letters to me. And then the goal was when you get to school, preach to 6 souls. So when I got to school and I started preaching to people, I didn't know that I was just setting a foundation that just distinguished me from every other person. Because in the process of preaching to people, I was the upright person. And I had some remarkable miracles as a JS1 kid then that I can't even go into now. Things that were unusual. I had cases when I'll fail a test, the teacher will say, "Because you failed the test, I'm repeating the test." I was embarrassed. But I was like, the test, so we're starting this test again. I'm not kidding you. There was one that was so embarrassing that I couldn't even speak. Because I was busy doing class for Hamilton work, and she said, "You're too busy. I'm writing this test. I've cancelled." I have another one that gave me extra marks. I think that was a mistake. I took it back to her, and I said, "Madam, you gave me extra." And everybody feel that, but I got extra. She now said, "Oh, it was a mistake." So she corrected it. A few weeks later, she came into the class. Someone did something wrong. She now said, "Everybody kneel down. Only Emmanuel." I know Emmanuel couldn't have done that. I was embarrassed. Like everybody kneel down in the classroom. Only Emmanuel should sit on the desk. Of course, out of respect, she said the head girl too can sit down, because that was in SS2. But that was my story. Seniors would call me, tell me, give me one small, go to this girl, tell her that, this is a bracelet, tell her you don't know the person that sent you, just say you've never seen his face. And I said, "Yeah, okay, I can't lie." The guy looked at me, "Are you mad?" I said, "Yeah, I can't lie. That's a blatant lie." I chopped one slap for that, which I'm very proud of till today. But, the guy that defended me ended up meeting me in university and being I think it was my mate or even a junior or something. But the whole point is they were all my friends and they respected me and they just saw me like on a different pedestal. I had people just come and just dash me money. Just take it. Just like you. I don't understand your spirit.
In SS2, Emmanuel became the head boy of the school, something he had purposed in his heart right from the first time his mom dropped him off.
The day my mother dropped me in school, because I was head boy in primary school, immediately she dropped me and she said bye-bye and she left. I just remove I removed my slipper, but I just looked up and I said, I'm going to be the head boy of the school. And one of the first things I did was go and look for who the head boy was and understand the standard. And then from there, plotted the chart till SS2 and SS3. But because I was class captain, so it was a deliberate attempt because I just liked that whole reputation. And I felt it was strategic to be the head boy. At SS1, they already call you head boy. Can you imagine before you now get to SS3 and you're now the school captain?
As a young boy, Emmanuel had decided to study business because he wanted to be able to choose when and how he worked, having been inspired by his friend's dad.
Well, I was inspired in SS1 or so, JS3, when my friend, good friend, he's a professor in the US, Obi Nobilo, said his dad used to choose the times he goes to work sometimes. So he wake up and call the office and say, "I don't want to go to work today, so tell them I'm not coming." He was a contractor, businessman, as it were, general supplies and so on. But that inspired me, so there are people who can wake up and decide they don't want to go to work. So I decided I was going to now study business, either economics or anything that was close to social sciences. But I was a science student, and then you could not be head boy if you're not a science student. And I wasn't willing to gamble. So part of the plan was go and do science, but don't do further maths in SS3. Do Greek or that was the alternative. I can't remember the alternative. Economics, sorry. So that was my plot. So they were surprised that the first head boy not to do further maths or not to do electronics. I said, no, there was no need. I want to do business. And then my father's best friend was also a businessman. And I saw and I felt this liberty of just being able to own your business. But frankly speaking, which I'll reflect in further conversations on this topic, the motive was not exactly perfect. The whole idea of working for yourself is not good enough to inspire anybody to be a businessman because how do you say it? When is it the one that wears the crown? It's pretty uneasy. Mm-hmm. So, but that was what inspired me. I just wanted the liberty and freedom of owning a business. That was the initial inspiration behind that. It just felt good to be a CEO.
Okay. So what happened next after school? What did you choose to study? How did that impact on what you studied? Okay.
So now the journey has started. There's another level of popping. So I got to university. And sometime in my, 300 level, I got inspired. I can't go into those reasons now, but I got inspired to start a business. So I called my friends and we decided that, let's start a microfinance bank or microfinance institution, non-governmental organization, microfinance institution for students. So we take savings and we give out loans. So we had this product we developed. It was called Don't Go Home Broke. I only did it for 1 year with my friends Charles, Mickey, Kunle of blessed memory, Ubong, and Oluchi. Amazing. I mean, we just came together. Okay, let's do that. So I was the lead. And then, at that time, 2004-5, we raised like 100 grand that we put in savings. And then the people trusted us. So they asked me, we had like sales agents. So they go on and say, so they ask you, how do you secure your monies? Because we said it was like a non-governmental organization, NGO, MFI. And I'll tell you who taught me. It was this guy, the current founder and CEO of Lapo. I met him once in Abuja. I went out on mentorship, he explained to me. He gave me some advice and told me I'm free to come to Benin and learn the trade. But I never followed through because, I just I got a job very fast. So, but the story was, and listen to this, is important. We wrote a proposal to GT Bank, to Intercontinental Bank, and I think First Bank. GT Bank called us. And I remember going to town that day from school because Gwagwalada is very far. I used University of Abuja. Gwagwalada is very far from town. With Mickey to Miracle, she listened to this, I'm sure. We went to town. We sat down with the guy. His name is Ralph. He should probably be a chief now. And the guy said, I'm first of all impressed that you guys even thought about this. And what we proposed to GT Bank is that we'll put the savings with you guys. But in exchange, we wanted some, maybe sponsorship or whatever. And the guy said, well, your idea is good. I'll push it to head office. I cannot guarantee they'll listen to you. And then, I looked like I wanted to change the world, but I didn't realize that it was still crude at its form. Maybe it was a nice letter. I think it was handwritten. I think it was typed. Or something like that. But the code short was clear with savings deposits and on projections. Then as a final year student. And the guy said, you know what? If you're going to serve, I give you a guarantee. Once you just walk your service to Abuja, you have a job with GT Bank. That one I can tell you. But of course, I never served in GT Bank. And so I never served in Abuja, so I didn't take the offer. And of course, I'll tell you the stories of what happened when I now moved. But the story was, we started this business. And when I left, I handed over to Mickey. Mickey mobilized 300,000 and she gave out one loan, to some guy opposite school who had this thing. And then the set after me also continued and they did it too. But Adama came. Adama is a Gulam. She's in the UK now. She also did. So I handed over to like it was the fourth generation. And I said, you know what? I think we should take a break on this. Maybe we can resume later, which we never did. But that was the story of all the people that I worked with. We call them campus managers. And the whole idea was to provide a platform for students to save. So we had this product we started, which some students saved. It was called, it was like a pension plan. It was called graduate pension. So they will save until they graduate. So when they graduate, they will have some money. So I hope some of these ideas some people know to keep around with it. So I need to go and quickly tell Ribi and Salami that they need to quickly go and compare Nigeria because I've already set it up. But that was the idea we gave students. Graduate pension, don't go home broke. And I think something else that, savings there and now. Yeah, that's what we did.
You wanted to talk about the reasons that inspired this business.
So there was a mix. I was dating someone then who was 1 year ahead of me in school. So I felt I needed to play catch up. And I mean, this is part of the reasons though, because I was always been entrepreneurial in my mindset. But this further fueled it. That's one of the reasons. I need to put things in perspective. So my partners will not think that I use them because of love. But that was part of it. I felt I needed to just wake up. But more importantly, there was this gentleman that inspired me. He was the CEO of Suburban Telecom, Bruce Ayunote. I mean, then they were young boys in their late 20s, early 30s. These guys had more money. In fact, he told me that he had more money than his bank. When MTN came to Nigeria, they were terminating MTN calls. So then before MTN settled down, they were doing that service because they had access to Nitel's infrastructure. Cut the story short, they were rich. Of course, they maybe didn't make the best business decisions, so I learned in future, but they were okay. And I was inspired. And so I would go and stand, and their office was next to my church. So every time in church, after church, I would just go and stand in front of the office. This was me in 400 level, 400 level. I'd also be looking at the building and watching all the guys coming in and going out. And I was blown away, and then that attraction started, and then, I'll tell you, maybe a little more later, but that's really the second inspiration. So Bruce was inspiration. I felt it was good to be. And I also began to sense that the job market was a mess because everybody I looked around and I saw the kind of jobs they did, I felt there's something going on here that doesn't add up. And that was, then it wasn't as bad as now that there's so much unemployment, but I felt the job market was not what it was. And I was beginning to prepare myself to be independent. And so that's like the third reason, if you put it in perspective.
So that was the business Emmanuel started while in the university, called Conceptual Initiatives and Youth Development. But in his final year, 400 level, Emmanuel was made chairman of seminars of the economics department by the president. As the chairman, Emmanuel had organized a seminar and invited Bruce to come speak. But the day before the event, Bruce reached out to Emmanuel to inform him that he would no longer be able to make it and that he would send someone in his stead. Now that disappointment became the biggest blessing of Emmanuel's life.
So I invited Bruce. Now Bruce was supposed to come for a particular, I think Monday or so. Then Bruce just called me and said, "Hey, Emmanuel, yes, that's a Sunday night. Man, I can't come. There's a problem." I said, "What's the problem?" He said, "There's this very important meeting we're trying to have with, I think it was maybe the commissioner or minister or something, or governor, I can't remember. And I'm going to send someone." Now that disappointment became the biggest blessing of my life. He ended up sending his chief marketing officer, Chukwuka Monye, who I believe, listen to me, and I can quote him anywhere, he's the father. Nobody knows that he's the father of, in Nigeria, the consulting was a cabal, is the big four. There was Nexon that came, but there was another company, CUC, that nobody never paid attention to. But that CUC gave birth to me, to Salami, to Lazribi, to who else? And every other person that Salami and I have given birth to, among other people he raised, that was what he did. And nobody knew that. So he took the intelligence of the big four and even the global consulting firms, the McKinsey's and so, because we worked with some of their ex-consultants. It was in 2008 during the global financial crisis. So some of them left their jobs and he brought them to Nigeria, and we were privileged to work with them on the same desk, live with them in the same house. And guess what? That knowledge that was very elite, I'm talking about the holy of the holies of strategy, was democratized and handed over to us that went to universities that are not even on the radar at all. And that was the blessing I had. So that was the guy that came that time. He was working at Suburban. He came to University of Abuja, and then he now spoke to us. We were so impressed. I also brought my pastor then, which I'll talk about shortly, Pastor Dele Shumakinde, amazing gentleman who also trained me on the attitude and work ethic. When you work for men of God, they don't give you any rewards. So that work ethic is what I took to the corporate world. And people wonder, well, you're not about the money. I say, no, because it's about the service first. And I'm here to learn. When I learn, you can pay me when I start to add value. So that one, balanced that perspective for me. So they came, they spoke to us, were inspired, and I kept the relationship with Chukwuka. Chukwuka left Suburban, moved to Lagos. Then I was posted to Lagos. Now you see stories coming together. Then Chukwuka said, "Hey guys, I'm just starting a business. You guys interested?" Don't worry, I'll save that for when you get there. And so that was how that disappointment of Bruce now became a blessing.
Why did Emmanuel regard it as the biggest blessing of his life? Find out after this short break. I'm Oshaye, and you're listening to Origins Africa podcast. Hi, dear listener. If you love our show, please leave us a review on iTunes and Apple Podcast. You can also send us a tweet or comment on Instagram at OriginsAF. We love to read from you. Nopes, not later. Yes, I read your mind. Do it now. Thanks a lot. Also click the subscribe button and share with a friend. Let's make a difference together, one origin story at a time. Hi guys, welcome back to Origins Africa podcast. So Emmanuel came over to Lagos, started NYSC.
This is it now. This is where the story changes. So when we got to Lagos, don't forget what I told you Chukwuka did to us. He democratized. Now, at that time, I could count the number of Nigerians who could build financial models. These things we say now, there was a history. As at 2007, 2008, apart from the big four, KPMG, PwC, Arthur Anderson, not Anderson, well, then Accenture, and then I think there's this other one, Deloitte. They were, and most times when they left, they went to other elite organizations, oil and gas firms, and so on. Nobody was catering to the middle market. So you had this very large gorge. So Chukwuka took us. He said he was starting. We joined him then to UC, myself and Charles. We used to work from his dining table. Now, we started from there until the company grew when he got this very big project with the commercial bank. And then we now moved to an office in VI and our lives took off. But before then, we'll come to the office. We're coppers, earning 10,000 then, always broke, we're living from hand to mouth. But listen, we would work from 8 a.m. in the morning when we resume till about 1, 2 a.m. I'm not kidding you. You only stand up to eat, maybe stretch your legs, use the bathroom. I did this for almost 9 months. So we worked. Then if you go to bed at the point, because we used to go home late, because I used to live very like 5 bus stops away from Festac, and it was too late. My friend is in Yaba. So at some point, he knows there's a bachelor there. And he says, okay, there's a spare room. You guys can sleep over. So we did the first night. That was, in fact, it started because of one late night work. So we were sleeping Monday to Friday, and then weekends we go home. And I was staying with my friend Ovie, my best friend in secondary school then, in Lagos. But here's the story. If at 2 a.m., he goes to bed at about 10, and he wakes up at 2, 3. Now, if he wakes up at 4, maybe don't forget I went to bed at 1. And maybe you finished your slides, it wasn't complete, your indentation was wrong, your alignment. When you had indentation, there's that thing in Microsoft PowerPoint. When you put a dot, you put a bullet, you need to indent it, move the first letter 2 inches or 2, whatever that measurement is, and then it should follow and align to that order. Your arrows must sync. That level of training is what I received. If you wakes up and the document looks upside down, you just come to the door, knock the door. Hello, Charles, Emmanuel, or whoever made the mistake. It's both of us. Sure. That's it, your day has started. You go and correct your mess. And we were proud. I was so enthusiastic. I was excited because I was learning. He took us to the club one day, and guess who we met? Achaleke. At that time, the current director of McKinsey in Africa, for president, I don't know the title now, but he's the McKinsey guy in Africa. At that time, we met him in the club when he was coming to a project, and they were having chat. And I knew in my heart that this privilege was not ordinary for any young guy who went to University of Abuja, finished with 2-2, and, but in that, we had challenges. Of course, there were times that we go months without salaries because there was just no business. And he didn't just take any project that was cheap. He had his standard. But we stuck by it, and we're excited. We get to work when the light is off and the inverter is dead. This was in the house before we moved. We'll sit down, he start telling us stories about his work, his exploits, and we'll just be in awe. That was the training I received. Never complained, reward, compensation, all that stuff that people deal with now when they're trying to train young people. I wasn't bothered. There was a day I even washed his car, because the driver traveled and there was nobody. I say, he now asked me, didn't you see the car was dirty? I went to wash it too. Then Charles now came. Shit. If it's me. Of course, it was a joke. We laughed about it. But the truth was, I'm happy I washed that car. It wasn't my job description, but I always am happy I did that. Otherwise, I'll not be speaking to you today.
Okay. So how long were you with him?
So I worked at CC for 3 years. My journey at CC was interesting because there are 2 types of people. Now, this pop thing is going to come back. In consulting is not exactly easy. And when you're using things like Porter's 5, marketing assessment, industry frameworks, market sizing, market customer segmentation, just like a child that will say, come, go, and doesn't know what that means. It's just repeating what an adult said. I didn't pop early. Charles probably popped early. So I didn't understand this thing. So I struggled a bit, but I was very diligent and I had a good attitude. I can say that free because of the training I had received from Daily Market in terms of when you're just disciplined and you just follow the leader. You don't need to ask questions. So Chukwuka, I think, liked that. And because normally I should have been fired, frankly speaking. I didn't meet the minimum standards. And that was because I had I didn't used to read. So my mind wasn't developed. If you don't read as a young person, your mind will be small. But when you read, it opens up, you pick up words, you pick up context, you pick up perspectives, and then your understanding is better. That's one of the advantages of reading, your knowledge. It opens your mind. So I had a poor reading culture because I think I'm dyslexic. So I prefer to listen. And I didn't know that until just a few years now, all this while. So all this while, after 7 chiefs and so on, I never really read books. I just listened to CNN, pick a few articles here and then, binge on news articles, and I'll go on and shine. But then, I popped late. I popped about maybe my second to and a half year, third year. I remember the first proposal I wrote and I said, this is good, you can send it. Then that's when I began to realize that, okay. But of course, I gave him 6 months notice before I left. And then, of course, when I left, when I was leaving, some of the staff were crying. It was a very emotional moment. I also tried to do my own private because I really helped and brought him to. That was when I encouraged Salami, really come to Lagos, come and work, come and join us, come and see what we're doing. So he came, he was a set, I think 2 sets after me, but he was part of the system. I left him there and then he also left later. And there were a couple of other people that were raised. These are generals in specific industries doing amazing work that nobody knows about. And these guys can sit on the desk with anybody, international or local, big 4, global, local, and give them decks and slides. That you can match. Chukwuka trained us with that level of precision and discipline. So I left after 3 years.
Okay.
To start Conceptual again.
Oh, okay. But before we even go there, so because I'm trying to understand, you had mentioned you were excited even as you were doing the work. But
Yes.
I'm trying to wonder how it wasn't frustrating seeing as you hadn't popped in that period. Because if it were me, I'm doing something for 1 to 3 months, but it took you about 2 years before you popped. And then you were still excited. You were still doing the work. Didn't you want to quit? Weren't you frustrated?
So Chukwuka told us some very interesting things then. Chukwuka made us feel that we were the most brilliant people, or what we were doing was the most important work in entire Nigeria. He used to tell people, and I began to realize this when I left, and I'll tell you about it. Shere, this is very important. Nigeria has a huge human capital crisis. People don't know. See, respectfully speaking, and I'll tell you about some of our clients now who we're serving. I had to write a list. There are top visionaries up there, big ideas, great stuff. But the middle management is literally empty. We don't have middle management in the country. So if you go to organizations in VI, have you noticed you see a lot of Indians, a lot of Chinese? Now, there are some that run their companies, but people don't know that it's just the problem of middle management. In fact, I can tell you for free, well, let me not go. Nigeria is the biggest economy in Africa. But you know what? If you go and check all the banks in Nigeria, as amazing as they are, and they've done very well, and they all inspire us, and I still want to be like build organizations that are successful as some of them, like GT Bank and so on. But guess what? The top 3 biggest banks in South Africa combined, their assets is bigger than the entire Nigerian banking system. Nigeria's economy is wide, but it's not deep because there are no middle managers. So Chukwuka told us early that, listen, guys, when you leave me, there is nobody that you cannot sit down and have a conversation with. And we believe that. And it's true. Even Charles, my colleague now, is doing very well, CEO of one of the top tech companies in Nigeria now. So he's not CEO, head of sales, even though he went to UK and did some other things. Amazing stuff. Did amazing stuff for his level at that time. So the whole idea was that's what Chukwuka told us. And guess what? We believed. And Chukwuka was right. When I left, the people I started to consult with or consult for, even me, I began to see that, wait, I actually have something that is unusual here. And that was what kept me going. So, but the good attitude was also, I wasn't frowning my face or putting up an attitude or any of those funny things. And at the time, I was also trying to fill up the gaps. So if you don't deliver on the deck, what can you do? You just look around, whatever it was, even if it's to pamper the other staff and tell them, don't worry, take transport money. Because I did that a few times. Maybe salaries were delayed and they said they couldn't come to work. I said, hey, don't bring up the conversation. Please keep quiet. I'll just bring that money to my pocket. Come to work tomorrow. Chukwuka didn't know I did all that. But that was me. I was just loyal. And I learned that from Delo Shumakinde, with respect to spiritual values of just being upright and loyal in the organization. So that was what really kept me going. Chukwuka told us that we're going to be the best in the world. And I believed him. And we didn't turn out bad.
Okay.
We didn't turn out bad.
I guess he was also a great manager who, despite all your struggles initially, yet still believed the best in you.
Yeah, he did overlook it. But you know what he didn't realize he did? He gave birth to a second type of professional. Now, if you want to work in consulting, you usually have to be like your IQ has to be extremely high. You must have read first class, great university. That was, maybe I could put Charles in that category. I was in another category of the people that don't pop that you have to get them to pop. The discipline and the curriculum you design must be different, and you have to be patient. But guess what? When he did that to me, that was the same patience I extended to my own people. So when we started to hire people, we also gave them that. Some of them didn't come in and as amazing as they are now. Doing amazing things. But I extended that same grace I received, even though I've had to define my own too. It can't be forever. Where you just. So I did that, and that was what he did to me. He gave me that chance, and then I extended that chance to another generation. Because normally, for you to get into any of these top 4, your IQ must be different. You understand? And when I say different, you're extremely brilliant, and other things, but that was what happened, really.
Okay, so second year thereabout, you popped, and less than a year after you said. Second and a half year, you popped, and then less than 6 months after you decided. I
was improving gradually. Don't get me wrong, I was improving gradually, but the remarkable difference for me happened in the last 6 months, I think, before I left. That's my opinion.
Okay.
Even though it wasn't still good enough for Chukwuka in terms of his standards, but Ali was fair enough to at least lead a team in some tasks, as it were.
Okay. And then less than 6 months after, you decided to quit. Why?
No, I always had, and when we became this is my friend, he was my boss. When I started working with him, I always told him I wanted to build a conglomerate. And I remember where I digressed. And he used to tell me that, Emmanuel, listen, conglomerate or not conglomerate, who are you going to hire to run that conglomerate? I didn't understand that question until we started having clients come to us. Some of these clients, you know them publicly. I used to joke and say I am a wholesale celebrity now. And I'll tell you what that means shortly. But a lot of people you see, celebrate on social media, they run to us at night like Nicodemus to come and, Oga, how far? The thing is like this. So that's what we do. We like private doctors. We know the real issues of organization and their struggles. So he had always told me that I know we do managers in Nigeria. But he knew I told him I wanted to run a conglomerate, blah, blah, blah. And now I've become more mature. It's not about the size of stuff. It's the relevance and the purpose. That's more important than size. Not just big thing, big this, big that. No. What exactly is the purpose? And I think that is more important than size, assets, money. And so you will have money eventually, but purpose is important. So I told him I was going to start sometime. So when it was about, maybe a year to then, I started to feel this, okay, it's time to go and just explore, like go and multiply. I just felt go in there and carry whatever you learn. So I told him, at least I tried. I gave him 6 months notice. So I told him, I want to leave, and so I'll tell you about leaving in 6 months. So I told him that maybe October, I was going in March or something like that. Yeah, so it was time to go and multiply. That was relief for me.
Okay. So you went off and started your own company. So what happened?
So I started a company called, now that was my first life because I have 2 lives in business now. And I need to specify that. So my first life was Conceptual. I started alone and I started pretty well. Initially, the first few months were rough because we left broke, but everything turned out pretty good. And business started to come. My first gig was about maybe 3-4 months I left. Then 2012, 2011. Yeah, late 2011. I got my first gig. It was like 5 million naira. That some gentleman, I went there, made the presentation, just loved it. And it was all around training of human capital. I remember then as a young man, they paid me 2 million naira cash because the money was going to be transferred. And I remember going home with a duffel bag of 2 million naira. I'm not kidding you. In VI then, because we used to live in VI and we got a BQ that we're using.
So you just went to the company, no appointments?
Okay, good question. So there was a place I think there was an old friend we met somewhere who reached out to me and said, hey, by the way, there's some boys that are trying to do some government stuff. Can you talk to them? People, you just go out and meet people. And then I just said, okay, no problem. So I went and had a meeting with these gentlemen. They were, I think, they just do some public sector work. And then the gentleman now said they wanted to do this. So when I was in their office, I pitched for the business plan and all that. I told them that they have a problem with human capital clearly. And he said, and they just looked at me. I said, yes. I said, how can you be inviting me to write a proposal for you when you have almost 10 employees? And that's where I need to go share. That's what happens. They now looked at me and said, yes, now you have 10 employees, but you're calling me to come and write a proposal. When you're paying salaries, they can't write proposal. So they looked at me and said, there is a training. That's where I started. And I developed that training in CUC, but I didn't really make it common, but I talked about it. I called it the 7 skill sets, called it C7, whatever, and I'll talk about it shortly. But essentially, there's a diet that every employee should have. Because when I studied the way I popped, I realized that there was a diet that came together. Critical thinking, analytical thinking, problem solving, which is one. Then you have business writing, general awareness, and so on and so forth. I'll talk about that later. But this was what made me become brilliant. This is the secret of consultants. That's their secret. So I said, let's codify this training, which is what we're doing now, by the way. And that's when my origin story would likely, the future of my, when you call me back in the future, that's what you will see me doing, But the whole idea at scale. But hey, that was what I told them. So, when I told them out, they were so impressed. They were like, that's true. I told them a lot about how pop store, how people pop up. What these guys did? They shut down their company for 3 months. They told me to hire people for them, and they locked the office and said, train these guys for the first 3 months. They understood the value of training. Brilliant men. I always respect them and I appreciate the offer and what they did for me then. But that was what they gave me to do. So I now had to quickly hire people. First mistake I made, I overhired. And I'll tell you the story later. But to cut the story short, I ran that training for 3 months. So I sat down, rolled my sleeves, I trained the class. I remember I gave those guys my life. I remember even how much I impacted the class that some of them who had offers to go to other consulting firms didn't want to go. And their family members didn't understand why. Some of them are celebrities now, by the way. Why this guy? What is this guy telling you? This is your teacher. But I was telling them that this is value. Teaching them these skill sets to the letter. It's not coming and teaching you, well, not the highfalutin stuff or excessive soft skills, which we were very good at in Nigeria. Every charismatic man that is filled with the Spirit of God just teaching, respectfully speaking, soft things. There are hard skills, financial modeling, assumptions, valuation, your PowerPoint deck, the storyboard, the points at the shapes, the graphs, the charts, the tools. This is what makes the real world. Sitting down with investors, explaining to them, building your critical case, giving them multiple perspectives. That is what should happen in Nigeria that will make the economy deeper, But I'll tell you someone who we're serving now, and you see why I say there's a human capital crisis. But that was what I did for these men. So, of course, when I pitched all this, the way I'm pitching it to you, if you're impressed, they were impressed. And before I left the building, it was in Dolphin, and before I drove out and got to Dolphin Bridge, they had already called me and said, come, that thing you told us, we're very interested. So they now rushed me to writing a proposal, which I did. I built them, and then it's just this history. I'm still very much in touch with them, by the way.
That's great. You said you overhired. What did you mean?
So the biggest mistake I had when I left CUC was I didn't have a mentor. So I made a lot of money, but I made also poor choices, poor financial decision choices. So and the reason was, if I had a mentor would have told me, no, you're just starting, just get one assistant, things like that. But I had these two core people, fantastic people, and then there was these three other people I now hired. These two people were a bit more mature, but the other three were learners. So we had 3 + 2, that's 5. I mean, think about it, Oshe. The problem of managing 5 people is a beast, because there's a concept called social loafing. I coined another one called corporate loafing. The concept of social loafing simply means this: if you tell one horse to pull a cart, the horse will pull it with about 99-100% of its energy. But when you bring 2 horses, the efficiency will drop to about 90. If you make it 4 horses, it will drop to 80. In other words, because it's distributed carefully among the horses, somebody will begin to slow down. So that's what really happens. So when you have too many people to manage and you have client work to deliver, you cannot properly supervise your people. So because everybody will finish, send the work to you, there was no middle manager. So if they send, you have to review 5 things. Think about that. And then still get back and have meetings and clients. So it was a mess, and that was part of the thing I didn't get. I just thought the project was big and I needed a lot of people. But no, I realized that you need experienced people. So one experienced person would have solved all my problems, but I didn't know that. But of course, the relationship is still good. It came at a price, huge price, because you paid salaries. Sometimes you had to take loans to pay salaries. And it wasn't really, it was just it wasn't necessary.
So you had started, and for the first 3-4 months, you didn't have any new client yet.
Well, we were slow. So Charles and I were just patching here and there,
So you and Charles started together?
Yeah, but it was, I registered the company, and he also eventually registered his own company. But he wasn't really, he did consult for a bit just to survive, but that was not really his thing. I also, funny enough, I didn't tell the story. I remember when we left, we couldn't pay our rent. So our rent was due. So I went to meet my landlord. Then we're living in VI, and even how we got the house, maybe I'll go back later and tell you about it. But the cut the story short, I told myself that, I didn't come to Lagos to count bridges, and I want to live in VI. I don't know how it's going to happen. I just said it out. 2 weeks later, somebody told me there's a BQ in VI, nice place, let's come in and look at it. And that was it. And guess what? After a few days, my cousin called me. Helezura, I must really always appreciate what she did. She said she's moving to Abuja, she's been transferred. Dude, when I went to her house, I packed everything. She gave me everything. Like, I furnished the house from scratch. Meanwhile, I gave out my first, I don't want to, it's not a principle, but I did give out my first salary out, church and all that. But I won't say that's the reason, so that I don't go and create some people emptying their pockets. No, I just said that I don't know if that was what God did, but God, I know it was God, because I had everything: TV, DSTV, generator, gas cooker. Like, she gave me couch, wardrobe, everything in an empty house. And, that my salary couldn't have paid that. That was how I started living in VI with my friend Charles. But to cut the story short on that, we started the advisory firm. We're just helping here and there. So we couldn't pay our rent after we left CUC. So we told our landlord, just give us 1 month. We'll figure it out. When the rent was due, Charles just went out and got this gig for us. The funny thing is, the first client we did was training. So Charles told them that. Charles took us to go and sell. So when we sold to gentleman, fantastic gentleman, and I used to appreciate him, Jolako. He gave us our first. He didn't even know that he did that. Patek and amazing guy. So Dolapo said, okay, guys, I like everything you said, but guess what? I realized that Dolapo, now this was before Dolphin, my first big break. Dolapo said, come, look at, I hired some people, coppers. I'm just trying to see how we can build up. He was doing advisory services for governments, and it was like a power advisory. So when we finished talking generally, at the end, I said, by the way, there's this training thing, this C7 courses I'm trying to do, blah, blah, blah. As I was talking, Dolapo was listening. When I finished, the same pitch I gave those guys months later, Dolapo said, okay, interesting, we'll look at it. Before we got home, Dolapo had called Charles. Or I think by the time we got home, I said, come, tell Emmanuel, I want that training for my guys. I just hired some people and they need to be trained. And I did the same training for them. Some of them have also grown up to do amazing things, even though the training was just brief, it was like a week. But guess what? As they were doing the training, there was another company next door. Now, this company is very popular. And I have to mention the name Softcom. Softcom was next door. Softcom now called for the training too. I said, we heard what you're doing for these guys.
Interesting.
Cut the story short, we did the training for Softcom. The first installment was Dolapo's money. That's what we gave landlady mobilization. Softcom's balance. Second, landlady take your money. That's how we survived. But guess what? When we did the training for Softcom, the accountant then called me just a few months later and said, based on the, I think he's a PhD now in the UK, the university lecturer, and said, dude, based on that training you gave us, I couldn't but remember you. And now, interviewed me for his thesis and blah, 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 human capital, blah, blah. But to cut the story short, that was how much impact we're making. Though it was small, but we didn't know that we were literally training people. Don't forget where it started, from Chukwuka down to me and then down. Chukwuka was, by the way, working with all these top consultants, and he was one of the most impressive Nigerians. He didn't even work for any of them, but he was adding value at that point. And that was what he transferred to us. So I was sitting on the same table with people who had worked in McKinsey, Booz, Allen Hamilton, and what have you. And we were brainstorming, and I was learning. That was the free gift I received from Chukwuka. I call it a free gift, frankly speaking, because I feel like I will still need to bless him a lot more when I get wealthier.
Interesting.
So that was the story.
Okay. So after the big training with these guys, what happened next?
My life took off on two dimensions before I finally died in my first life. In quote, and I said I died business-wise, because what people don't realize is that every entrepreneur most times goes through his death process. Most people do. If they don't, it means they died. They had it earlier. But you get to that point where until the seed dies and abide alone, you have to get to the end. That's if you're going to succeed. Otherwise, you die and you never resurrect in business. So people never resurrect, but I did, and I got a new lease of life. My wings were clipped. So I was because I was making a lot of money. I mean, as a consultant, then you sit down, you do a business, and they pay you 1 million, 1.5 million. Think about it, or 500,000. And that was the value then. You just see how much is your fees. But I was already, like I said, I had too many. I was carrying too many loads. If I didn't have that much, I would have probably been very comfortable. But that's what the lack of mentorship also did. But here's the catch. So the key thing was I started having impressive clients. Now, one of my clients was I can't mention the name of the organization, but it's a very popular faith-based organization. It's one of the most popular in the world, has branches across the world. These guys called me to come and consult for them. They didn't even ask me which church I go to. That's to show you that when competence is critical, it puts aside prejudice. They didn't ask whether I could speak in tongues or was born again. They weren't bothered. They wanted the dude, can you help us? And then I went in there and added value. I mean, I traveled. I did the first one, and then they now posted me to a second, to another branch outside Lagos, and I was there, and that was what I was doing. But I was mostly doing the work alone because my people were still learning, in the process. But to cut the story short, that was how I took off my first life. So I eventually crashed in that first life when, I became overleveraged. So, you borrowed money to pay salaries, and you didn't understand the dynamics. You're not paying attention to your numbers. And then, well, I never told anybody this, and then suddenly at that period of crisis, that was when I now got married. Can you imagine? So everything I struggled. So I literally came to a halt. Even the car I had, I lost it because I parked it for, exchange for collateral, and cut the story short. So I went through my own dark moment, and it was very quiet. A lot of my family people don't know about this. It was a very private session. I'm a very private person, certainly. My wife knew, of course, but I just managed myself. I was in those dark periods for about 6-7 months until I hit another break. But I'll tell you about that later. But that was really what happened in that period. So I had a few clients, and I was making money, but I wasn't paying attention to the books. And it was mostly training and, this human capital and these unique skill sets that I told you that I had learned and received.
Okay. So within the 6 months, did you need to right size or?
No, of course. So that was where it ended. I told them, guys, I can't continue like this. So I did the first 3, the last 3 left. The younger ones, I told them they have to chill. So, I let them go. We're still good friends now. The other 2 stuck by me, literally. And it was later I had to tell them to leave, but they stuck till the end. Amazing. I mean, went months without salary, all of us. You understand? And they were just there. And even their family people couldn't understand. But maybe it's also as a boss, you also have to learn how to manage people. I'm not feeling like I was the best boss. It was my poor decisions that got into that mess. Of course, everybody's happy now. You know, the story. But then it was looking like I wanted to just die. Of course, I didn't feel like committing suicide, no, but it was terrible. You were just.
What was going through your mind then?
To be frank with you, I didn't even know, because when I said I didn't know, like I was just blank. So you just wake up in the night and you're just praying. You know, you just wake up in the morning, you can't really sleep. You wake up early, you're just confused, and you're wondering, man, what are you going to do? There are obligations there, and the funny thing about obligations is that anyway, that was it, man. I was just in darkness, and I think at that time Charles had took off in his own endeavor, so he was also very supportive. He had helped me with some cash at some point. You know, hey, take this, just help yourself. Because he had started this contracting thing. He was plotting to school for his MSc. But he was very supportive, which I always appreciate. Among other things. You know. But that was what happened. And Kunle, of course, of blessed memory, also was very supportive with his wife, Kiki. So I had some friends who were very helpful. They knew that this guy was going through crisis. And the funny thing, because we didn't understand the definition of that crisis, which was poor financial management, or poor understanding, or lack of mentorship, or lack of guidance, that's what it was called. You know, nobody really understood. So that's how I started. So I eventually went back into my shell, and I just became a one-man army, or not a one-man army, but just before then, until when I now got this recommendation to a particular billionaire in Nigeria who was starting a university. And then the recommendation came from, I don't want to mention so that you don't see the connection because of people involved, but the recommendation came, I went and we started advice, and that's when we got this time around. I don't want to call figures here, but trust me, it was the multiples of the other ones I've already received. And he came with a car and some other privileges. Just go and help me sell my university. That was the next break. That's how your boy came back there. But still then, poor financial knowledge. I still made more mistakes.
Even at that point?
Before. Yes, I didn't know. Because that's it. And see, this is important, Shay. And I'm saying this because entrepreneurs don't know this. It's important. A lot of them don't know. When they start seeing money, they don't realize that, wait, this money is not my own. It's for the business. Pay yourself. So all that I didn't know. Some people know, and they turn out very successful. But I didn't know that. Nobody told me that was what it was. You know? And it's just funny. You know, I don't feel bad because I'm better off for it now. But a lot of entrepreneurs who will not tell you that was the mistake they made. They didn't understand money and how it should be managed.
Okay.
So yes, the contract ended abruptly because one of his, I won't call it cronies or one of his people went to lie on Usher. He was not impressed. He was just trying to tell some stories, which I believe, and it's the truth. I'm not trying to cook this up. You know, I've been honest. So they took away the car because the car was supposed to be ours. So what I should have done is I should have taken the money I received to go and pay down and collect my car, the other car. If you remember, I told you I packed the car in exchange for salary payments. Yeah. So I should have done that, but I didn't do that. So I now lost both. So I didn't know I was carless. This was new at the end millions a couple of days earlier. And it cost me some relationship. There's some people that I don't still call up to today, and I'm going to call them back when I'm ready and have the courage to do it. And I'm being very frank here because it was, things just got mixed up. And I decided to just keep my cool away because I don't feel I mean, of course, we've spoken a few times, but when I'm ready for them, I'll just go back and have that conversation. And that's the challenge of business sometimes. So that was the end of my first life in business.
So your first life ended when this contract ended abruptly. So I was now finally alone because at that time my two other colleagues had left. How long was the contract for?
It was supposed to be 3 months, but it lasted 6 months. The contract was go and get me new students. It's a new university. Okay. But the problem was that, and this is important in strategy for anybody who is doing strategy. The thing about strategy like that, when it's performance driven, because it was performance driven, the number of students was specified, 1,000. Number one, the person that went to report us to the founder said it himself. He said that these guys were already positioned to fail. But of course, I sold the project. I was broke then, and I sold it so well, and I got the gig. But the issue was the guy that reported us said that this was funny because the guy did not have good courses. And this courses, I think it was private university was not ready, was still getting his footing because it was private university. So the billionaire that everybody knows, by the way, Forbes, everything, but I can't mention, like I said, because I don't know if they want to be associated with me yet. The joke. But the whole point was the guy that reported us, which was like one of his principals, either vice chancellor or what have you, said that this project was beautiful because they were going to go and sell courses that cannot admit students. I'm talking about science courses, physics, chemistry, biology. That wasn't going to sell. They didn't have courses like law and so on. So, but that was not even the problem with the strategy. The problem with the strategy was initially the idea we sold was we'll go and do information sessions across Nigeria, and so that's why he gave us a car, travel around Nigeria, and if you deliver, I'll give you the car, which was a Jeep there, like literally GWP, very nice, big boy, someone from local suddenly, But cut the story short, the gentleman. And so what I did was the strategy problem was I realized that it was at the end I realized what was correct. It wasn't information session. Nobody knew the university, so people will not come for information session. So the information session were a flop. The one on the mainland island, nobody showed up. The one in Ibadan, it was the guy that recommended us that brought most of his friends and church members. There was really nothing going on. So it was the valedictory service. And at that point, we had run out of cash. That was the catch. That was where to get parents and students together. And I realized that strategy too late. So sometimes the strategy, you conserve your money for the longer. Don't spend the money yet until you figure it out. Because the strategy that may work, because strategy is about options. And you have to choose one at a particular time because you have limited resources. And that's part of it. So that was an interesting lesson that's carried me up until now. Even on big projects that we get with people, I tell them, no, let's not spend now. When we figure out the strategy later on, or the strategy that would work, then we'll unleash the war chest. But for now, let's start small. So that's what I learned, from that experience.
Okay. Who gave you the recommendation, by the way? I know you don't want to mention the name, but how did you connect with the person? How did the recommendation happen? That's the billionaire, right? I was at my lowest moment, so I went for advice. I said, dude, I told him, he's my senior, he's one of the men I mentioned in my list, by the way. So he said, okay, I can't help you, but you know what? There's this guy, go and talk to him, just sell an idea or something. So I sold the idea to one of the relations of the billionaire. And then the guy said, okay, the idea is interesting, training, everything. And what we're proposing to him initially before they told us to sell? We're proposing that I want to take my courses to the university. This stuff that I'm teaching people, I told you, Softcom, the Blackboard and Partech and so on. Yeah.
And other guys that was what I said, let's bring it to the campus. Let's get these guys in their 400 levels to start popping. So when they come out, they can be useful to companies from day one. But the guys didn't get the picture and nobody still gets it. They are teaching entrepreneurship university. They're doing stuff, but I'm like, guys, you're missing it. Because when they come out and we're trying to hire them, I still see the problem. Cut the story short, he now said, you know what, we don't really, your course is nice, exciting. And I wanted to mix it with my conceptual idea. Remember that conceptual is the university that we did the whole savings loans thing. But what I wanted to do was, we wanted to create businesses on campus. So if you're studying law, you're studying agric, whatever you're studying, begin to do it on campus. So the campus should have like an enterprise that employs all the people that from all departments. So they will pick some of the best because it has to be on merit because they can't employ everybody. So imagine the accounting department, they will supply the accountants. Imagine the economics, they'll do the macroeconomic stuff. Imagine and then whatever the enterprise is about, whether it's about food processing, agri, that's now the main enterprise. Will be managed by the lawyers who draft the contracts, the relationships, the terms of engagement. So students can now see the reality of what they are learning in the classroom. And that's what I've been selling. Of course, you can't go to NUC and have this conversation, respectfully speaking. They're just going to, and I've been trying to get, but anyway, let's maybe we'll go and try again after this show. But that's what I was trying to do, that this is the killer. So when you come out as a lawyer, you're not drafting contract, you're drafting contract with understanding. You don't wait for anybody to train you. You get the picture. So that's what I sold to the school. But they said, this is really brilliant. But you know what? Our urgent need now is we don't even have students. We're just starting. So you know what? Come and help us sell. So that's how I got that project. I remember, I billed him like 20-something million, but he now cut it down. But think about that. Just picture it. You understand? The figure that it must have been. We used most of the money, of course, on the initial strategies that didn't work until we realized that, hey, this was what was supposed to work.
Okay.
So there was a referral. I went to tell the guy, I'm at my lowest every now. Go and talk to this guy. Go and talk to him. But he also referred me to someone who gave me advice, and I want to give entrepreneurs. He said, you're in crisis. You're in a crisis now. First of all, you're over-leveraged. You have too many staff. So, and by the way, your staff should go and sell. He gave me all that advice. I don't feel they could have sold consulting per se, but some of them tried. But here's what he said. He said, don't use your short-term problem. Don't use a short-term plan to solve a long-term problem. You clearly have a long-term problem. You're in debt. You need to plan long-term out of this issue. And I took that advice very seriously. You have to distinguish between a short-term problem and long-term problem. And the application to it's like use of capital. You can't take monies that you promise people returns monthly to go and do a long-term investment and come out in 5 years. No, you have to match. There has to be capital appropriation that matches. So that's what happened.
Okay. Then the financial management problem still happened and your first life ended. after this contract.
First life ended.
And that's how Emmanuel's first life in business ended. His life literally came to a halt and he lost it all again. But how did he pick back the pieces and start again? What happened next? How did he get from that point to where he is today? What did he do and what helped? Find out next week on Origins Africa podcast. Thank you for listening to our show this week. If you liked it, do leave us a review, a comment, and share with your friends. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend and to tell another friend. We would also love to read from you. So please do send us a tweet or leave a comment on Instagram at OriginsAF. You can also write to us at originsafricapodcast@gmail.com. Remember, do subscribe at wherever you get your podcast: Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, amongst others. Our sound producer this week was Tumisha Jani, and the theme song was composed by Just Ritimi. I'm Oshaya, and you've been listening to Origins Africa podcast. Bye for now.
My father told me life is not a bitter